evening, and welcome to our Pittsford Central School District Board of Education meeting. At this point, the meeting is now called to order. At this point, would you please join us to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. May I have a motion to approve the agenda? It will be from Emily, the second from Sarah. Okay, all in favor? None opposed? That motion carries. Thank you. Next, we'll have a public hearing for real property tax law, 66A.
Yes, thank you very much. This is it's necessary to have, from a procedural standpoint, a public hearing for any comments on real property tax law 466-A. It replaces 466-K, which was previously adopted by the Board of Education. I think in summary, from what we've looked at from an analysis standpoint, I think originally the law was passed for first responders as property tax exemption. The Board of Education was fully briefed on it in terms of the tax impact and the shift per se. I think what's happened is there's been a refinement through legislation in terms of the criteria, the number of years, who's eligible, what happens in terms of surviving spouse situation. And so then the thought was to update that. We have a whole year to do this, but I thought since we have it, we get out ahead of it, especially, with the taxable status date. Again, it's a whole year, but I thought it would be best to just provide an update. There was some discussion as to whether or not we really needed a public hearing. The law says public hearing, A is different than K, but essentially there wasn't really anything significantly new other than, like I said, a refinement of some of the criteria. We've had this in place now for 2 years. I don't see any new or significant shifts. And what I do see is just a refinement, as I said, in the process and procedure. With that, I'll pause for any questions.
Are there questions? Okay, hearing none. Thank you, Mike. We appreciate it. Next, we'll have our principal's report. Ms. Sarah Jacob from Barker Road Middle School.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
I just want to start by thanking the Board of Education for your wonderful visit last Thursday morning. It was great to be able to connect with everyone and also be able to walk around the building with you and share, more of the exciting things that we have coming up at Barker Road. So I just want to say thank you for that. So looking at this school year, the 24-25 school year, these have been really our areas of focus at Barker Road. We have some of what I will go over is kind of year 2 of things that we're working on, and some things are kind of new this year. Starting with our right off of the leadership retreat from this summer with the Board of Ed and our district leadership and PDTA leadership, and the work we were doing around culture and Dan Coyle's book. We started off with a summer ILT in August. So this was our instructional leadership team. In addition to that, we also had our team leaders attend. And we really spent a whole day focusing on what this means for Barker Road. So we really, we recognized that we have a very strong culture at Barker Road, but really looking at how do we make those connections deeper and more purposeful. So what we looked at starting in that summer was we had a lot of discussion around that safety, vulnerability pieces, but we also looked at our shared purpose. So we went back to our mission and vision, which I think had not been in front of people in some time. So coming back to that, looking at those things, and then really focusing on the work ahead. It was really focused on deepening those connections, not only with staff, staff to staff, and student to student, but also student to staff. So we really looked at this school year, how can we focus on things, continue the things that we were already doing, like starting off the school year with our large 6th grade class being able to go to Camp Arrowhead and focus on team building, not only with their peers, but also with their 6th grade teachers as kind of an entry into Barker Road. But also looking at things that, other opportunities that we could expand on, especially when we looked at the staff piece. If you walk through the halls of Barker Road this week, we're doing an underground staff spirit week. So for instance, this week, every staff member was in tie-dye. The kids have no clue what we're doing, and it's kind of been a trend in the area and even nationwide, but it was kind of fun because in true middle school form, one of our middle school, our 8th graders came up to a teacher and said, "Why are you all in tie-dye today? Ew." And we were kind of like, well, so she didn't appreciate the tie-dye, but she noticed, right? So it was just that one little moment, that one little connection. So we're just trying to do fun things like that throughout the year. A lot more staff activities that bring us together as well, things like grazing days and things like that, to just really strengthen that staff piece. We're all kind of siloed, and it's hard to get out with the busy days, but we're trying to be very purposeful about that. So it was really, like I said, about creating connections, not only among staff and students, but everyone as a learning community. Year 2 of our strategic initiative. So we have jumped into this work and actually are in the midst with our fall work and leading into, we're going to spend a lot of time actually at our January faculty meeting around our social emotional benchmarks. That piece, we looked last year at our next gen skills, we looked at our CRSC framework, and we're still coming back to all of that, but this fall we really focused on some of those SEL benchmark components to this conversation and our strategic initiative, again, strengthening that rigor and authenticity while creating a welcoming and affirming environment. And always circling back to the hub in a lot of those conversations as well. So the SEL component has really been a focus. And we're also leaning on some of our district supports too. And creating, for instance, in our faculty meeting, creating just an SEL corner for just best practices, a place that's kind of a standing agenda item to be able to share, not only share from myself or from Richard as our assistant principal, but also really bringing in other voices from different departments and different teacher leadership within the building. Our capital project. So we are, the excitement just continues to build. It seems like forever ago that that the community passed the capital project. But it's getting closer and it's getting more real for everyone, which is really exciting, as Mike's nodding his head. So we know that this spring we'll actually, see the work start to occur. And as such, we've really focused on trying to make sure that we're creating a lot of space for discussion, for feedback, for questions. It's a big project, and pretty much every part of our building is going to be touched. And that has staff, on a little bit of pins and needles about what that really means for them over a 2.5-year span. So we've already held one session with staff where we've been able to kind of give a big overview. And then we actually had our second opportunity today where we did more of a Q&A session with staff, which was really great. And I think that, again, it's about, how is this going to affect my classroom, how I'm interacting with kids, how I'm teaching, and so forth. So that's been really fun. But it's finally getting to the point where we're really seeing some of that work is getting closer and closer. And we got a little taste of that, obviously, with the vestibule and that phase 1 part that all the buildings experienced. So I think the biggest key point here is we're going to just continue to keep that feedback loop open and working in strong collaboration with PDTA on this to make sure that people are feeling comfortable. If people have questions, they know that they have a space to be able to ask them, and that we can also, in turn, get those answers back to folks as soon as we can. So that's been great. And we had a really, like I said, successful afternoon after school today with any and all staff that wanted to come and hear more about the project. And like I said, be able to ask questions. We actually asked staff to submit questions ahead of time, so we had kind of an idea of where the conversation was going, but then also just opened it up at the very end for just a open Q&A session. So lots of good stuff there, and lots of excitement, I will say, as well, just around the plans for Barker Road. And then just lastly, this is a continual theme, and something very near and dear to my heart is just what it means to be Barker to the core. About 3 years ago, we did a reboot of our 7 core principles, and we coined the term being Barker to the core. It's taken on a life of its own. I think probably all of our families have heard that term before. And we really try to infuse it into everything we do. So not only do students hear about our 7 core principles and what it means to be Barker to the core in the classroom, but really it's woven into every conversation that kids are exposed to, from, reminders in the cafeteria about safety and what it means to be respectful of others, or if we're talking about being inclusive and with our after-school opportunities and things like that, and making sure that our clubs, that our students that are participating in clubs are carrying themselves, with those 7 core principles in mind. We're using it for a lot of our conversation with our within our student center and our counselors. We're doing a lot of the fall was, again, going back to that community building piece, and that we had a lot of community circles in classrooms and things like that. And a lot of the topic revolved around our core principles, and not only how they are, how we see them here at school, but beyond the classroom walls and things like that, and the school walls. So really honing in on what it means to be kind and empathetic and be able to connect with others in that stand-up way that is very important to us. And I think that with this, I think that it's a really proactive piece as well. And like I said, it kind of traverses all areas in the building, and hopefully beyond the school walls too. So being Barker to the core is still alive and well. If anybody needs a t-shirt, just let me know. And the kids are, they're doing a great job at this. We highlight students every week with Great Kids of the Week on the Morning Bark, which I know you've all seen, and we're so fortunate to have that daily morning show. But every Friday, part of what we do is highlighting 3 different students, 1 from each grade level, and it all ties back to our core principles. So they get that postcard that a staff member has nominated them, and they've either nominated them for one of the core principles, a couple of them, or all of them. And that goes home, and those students obviously are recognized on the Morning Bark and with their Pontillo's pizza slice as well, which is always exciting. So live and well, Barker to the core. With that, that's kind of an update of Barker Road. I didn't know if anybody had questions. Of course. Yeah. Yep. Yeah, lots of work to be done there. Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you all.
So next, we would like to entertain a motion for the approval of the November 12, 2024 minutes. That would be from Dave and Emily. So, all in favor? None opposed, thank you. We also need a motion to approve the December 3rd, 2024 special meeting. And that will be from Kim and Renee. All in favor? None opposed, thank you. So for our Board of Education reports from Monroe County School Boards Association, we will first hear from Kim from the Information Exchange Committee.
Thanks. So the November Information Exchange Committee meeting talked about two current SED initiatives, the Blue Ribbon Commission and regionalization. So for Blue Ribbon Commission on graduation measures, the work began in 2019, and now they finally have a comprehensive roadmap, so that's starting to get rolled out. Under this initiative, New York State schools will transition to one diploma. So right now there are 3 different diplomas. There will be one diploma with options to include advanced designations as an endorsement or a seal that you add locally on the diploma. And basically, a big change is that instead of just class credit and assessment requirements, there will be multiple ways for students to demonstrate their proficiency and reach graduation. So assessments will still be offered, but not required for graduation for all students. So the next school year, 25-26, they're going to release new credit requirement details. But the first freshman class that will be starting on this new track won't be until 2027. So still a few years, but we'll get some new learning standards, rubrics, guidance. So there'll be a lot more coming in the next couple of years about this. And the second one was regionalization. So regionalization is a collaborative model where districts can partner to address student needs and operational efficiencies. So this is something that New York State Education Department is pushing through or encouraging through our BOCES district superintendents. So they would look at, basically it opens up a pathway for districts to partner together to offer advanced coursework, to offer a range of subject areas, maybe share staff or share student support services, extracurricular activities, partner together with regional and industrial organizations. Basically, it just allows meeting challenges in a new way. So a lot of districts are coming up against financial and other challenges. So this would just allow different districts to work together. So what's going to happen next is there will be a needs assessment that superintendents can work with the district district superintendent to find out what opportunities might be available. And I know the Board of Regents had a meeting this week where they were looking at some amendments, so there might even be a little bit more to come on this. But it was a lot of information at the info exchange, so it was a really good meeting.
Thank you, Kim.
Right.
Can I ask a quick question? So, I understand the concept, obviously meeting the needs and becoming more efficient. That's not talking about incorporating 2 districts together.
No.
It's truly just gonna be on the surface of.
Yeah.
Okay.
So more like a shared services model rather than,
Incorporation.
Yeah.
Of 2 or more.
yeah, we're not combining districts.
Okay.
Yeah,
Just wanted to clarify.
good question.
Thank you. Next, we will hear from Emily Kay from the District Operations Committee.
Okay, so in November, District Operations brought in representatives from RG&E and then had a Zoom with a representative from NYSERDA to present on the programs and resources they offered to support schools' transitions to electric buses. For me, the big takeaway was that there certainly is money out there from both RG&E and NYSERDA to help with this transition, but it was really hard to tell how much we would actually qualify for. One thing that RG&E did strongly suggest was including them from the very beginning of the process towards the transition, both because of the long time horizon, but also because of potential impacts on the electrical grid as more districts are going. So they want to know if they're going to be hit with a ton of districts moving at the same time and then prepare for that early. The RG&E also went through their current rebate and incentive programs, but a lot of these required your district to either be part of a disadvantaged community or to make your charging depot available to the public in order to qualify. It sounds like these incentive programs might be changing as they get further into the mandate. They were pretty clear that they were listening to feedback and trying to modify, but that's sort of where it sits right now. The NYSERDA, Zoom, they just went through their bus and charger voucher incentives as well, and ways that they felt they could help with the fleet electrification plan. Like RG&E, though, it showed that they have the money available for the grants, but it was really hard to tell how much we would be able to qualify for. So.
Thank you very much, Emily. Are there questions? None. Next, we will hear from Sarah Pelucio, Legislative Committee Chair.
Just want to say real quick that yesterday we had our Zoom advocacy sessions at 9 a.m. and 3 p.m. We have 10 of our representatives there. We actually this year invited a representative from their office to attend as more of a listening session to just talk about the work that we've been doing so far this year. And that will then carry into our legislative breakfast on February 1st. So it was a very well-attended meeting, both sessions, and more to come on that. So, thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. So upcoming dates to remember: from December 23rd to January 3rd, our schools are closed for a winter recess. January 9, there will be a board visit tour at Jefferson Road Elementary. By a show of hands, may I see who can attend? Thank you so much. We appreciate that. And on January 14th is our next regularly scheduled meeting. Next, we will hear from Mr. Vespi with the financial report.
Thank you so much. First, for your consideration is the acceptance of the October Treasurers Report. You know, October's always the culminating event in terms of the tax collection process. So it results in our maximum cash flow. So you'll notice a number of investments in diversification. Since we've been using 3+1, you can see on the interest and earnings report, even with interest rates trending lower than previously, we're greatly exceeding the year-to-date expectations in terms of interest earnings. And I really look at that as continued strength because we've secured multi-month locked-in rates as we've done that cash flow analysis. So that's really good news on the revenue side. And obviously the substantial revenue has been through tax collection. Some minor updates. We did receive a first foundation aid payment of $1.8 million, and we continue to do well as we surplus equipment through auctions. So those are some highlights on the revenue side. On the school lunch program, couldn't be happier with our progress. Year to date, just a loss of $1,000 compared to the previous year, a loss of $73,000. So things are stabilizing. Participation is up. I think interest is up. And I continue to see an investment in food. You know, so it's not just about the profit, but it's about increasing the quality of what we do on the food service side of the operation. Nothing significant to report on the expenditure side. That concludes my report.
Thank you, Mr. Vespi. And may we have a motion to accept the treasurer's report from October 31, 2024? That would be Sarah and Dave. Are there questions? Hearing none, all in favor? None opposed. Thank you. The ayes have it.
Okay, thank you. Next for your consideration is the approval of Real Property Tax Law 466-A, which we previously discussed during the public hearing.
Thank you. May I have a motion for approval of the resolution for real property tax law? That would be from Emily and Dave. Sorry. And, okay. So are there questions? Hearing none, all in favor? None opposed, the ayes have it. Thank you.
And then finally, for your consideration is the cooperative bidding that we do with part of the electric bid. And again, we see rate stabilization because we buy in bulk. So where you see significant increases maybe on the consumer side, we're not experiencing that on this side because of our buying power.
Thank you. Thank you. Next, we will hear from Mr. Clark, Human Resources Report.
Thank you and good evening. Consideration, we have the professional staff report. We have one change in status from probationary to tenure, one supervisory and technical appointment, one administrator resignation for retirement with 26 years of service to the district, one supervisory and technical resignation with 23 years of service to the district. We have one administrator resignation, one school nurse resignation, one building substitute resignation. We have spring coaching salaries, and we have per diem substitute appointments. And I do apologize, we have two names that appeared twice. It's just a clerical error.
Thank you, Mr. Clark. May I have a motion to approve the professional staff report? Yes, that will be from Emily and Kim. Any questions? Hearing none, all in favor? The ayes have it. Thank you.
Thank you. Next for your consideration is the support staff report. We have one clerical appointment, we have one clerical resignation, one custodial appointment, two custodial resignations, one food service appointment, and one food service termination.
Thank you. May I have a motion to approve the support staff report? That will be from Renee and Sarah. Thank you. Any questions? Hearing none, all in favor? None opposed. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have three positions that we'll be recommending to the board for consideration. The job descriptions and justifications are included in the board packets. The overall common theme really centers around the removing of the single point of failure that we have with some of these positions, improving operational efficiency, no budget impact as we're reshifting and looking at staffing, not adding full-time employees, but looking at restructuring and shifting. So first is, for your consideration, is the transportation assistant.
May I have a motion to accept the transportation assistant? Be Dave and Sarah. Are there questions? Yes.
So, just want to understand, Sean, more about the budget neutrality of the positions.
Yeah.
Just thinking about the bigger context, like we just asked our community to help with advocacy work, and we're looking at that 1.5 million gap in our budget. So, are we looking at just renaming a position, or like replacing a position, or is this in addition? I'm just looking for to kind of understand the bigger picture.
It's a great question. It's not additional positions. It's looking at restructuring and really taking a clear look at what positions we have, what's actually needed and required. And as I shared, we do have, and it came out in an audit as well, we have positions like you think about Director of Transportation, you think about Director of Food Services, where we have no backup. If that person is out, there's nobody who can really take on the task and run the day-to-day operations, and then it causes a lot of chaos. It impacts students, it impacts parents and families. So part of it is making sure that we have some sort of redundancy in place. Not exactly, we think about it in terms of this too. So I think about human resources, and I have Orlando Benzon as our director. We don't do exactly the same thing, but we have some similarities in our roles. If he's ever out for a lengthy period of time, it's very easy for me to pick things up because I do some similar things, and vice versa. So having that where we don't have a single point of failure, the person's gone, so now the job responsibilities really fall flat. We really needed to shore that up, and that was something that we've been building over time. But it's important to look at from a budgetary standpoint, how do we do that with no budget impact? When we think about transportation, we're very short in terms of what we've budgeted for drivers in many areas of transportation and what we currently expend. And I know Mike can expand a little more on that. I would say it's similar in terms of the food services. We have allocations, but we don't have current staffing. What I can say about food services is currently the director spends, I'd say about 4 out of the 5 days actually in buildings supporting where staff absences are and shoring up their staffing to make sure that the lines still run, that the kids are still getting their food, that things are getting ordered, things like that. So I don't know if you wanted to expand at all, Mike.
Yeah, I just want a little bit on the financial piece. Well, first of all, the proposal for food service is separate, right? So that budget is outside of general fund. The transportation, to just zero in a little bit. In the past, we've had 4 dispatcher positions. We've consolidated 3. An assistant director position gives us more flexibility in terms of safety, backup for director, backup for driving, backup for dispatch. So there's just more flexibility in the position. So the idea is to convert an existing position and not fill another position so that we have a more flexible option in terms of backup. And, you know, we're looking at the same model in food service and the same model in terms of benefit coordination as well. You know, it was one of the surprising things to me that there wasn't a designated position that oversees that. So it's a consolidation of the existing position as opposed to adding a new FTE, which is typically what you do when you create these. We didn't take that model at all. It's a reallocation of resources for more flexibility. I think the primary area where we're vulnerable, not so much in custodial maintenance, because you know, we have that situation now, but in some of these other positions, we just didn't have the backup. And I think, as Sean alluded to, there was an audit finding, and we have had some challenges with backup and payroll, which we now have taken corrective measures to fix that. We now have a payroll supervisor and an assistant. So some of these critical support staff operations positions really need to be firmed up first, and these wouldn't be positions that, even with a significant deficit, that we necessarily would look away from, because these are flexible positions that are actual in the field working positions, as opposed to, you know, adding, you know, I know the position titles seem more administrative, but they're not. They're actually in the field working positions. So I think it's a better utilization of resources, especially in tough times. And if we did have to make cuts, we'd have to make some sacrifices in other areas to offset that expense. So I think that, coupled with, you know, with the rationale that Sean's provided, I think really gives an overview of the situation.
If I could just add, to simplify an answer, as I've met with every budget coordinator across the district, no one is able right now to increase their budget. So as we look at these positions, it's budget neutral or a budget reduction, given what we're looking at with our advocacy work. To give a really crude example of what both Sean and Mike are saying, I met with Mike last week because it looked like we were going to have possibly a really snowy, icy day one day. And I said, let's just revisit our protocol for calling a snow day. And our director of transportation was out, and our director of operations was out, and there was no number 2 to take the helm for either one of those. And so we do need a sense of redundancy when people are out, but also trying to figure out the best way to look at our budget crisis, if you will, as a mechanism to make us more efficient and utilize our personnel in a way that is going to benefit us in a way that we haven't had in the past. So that redundancy is huge, and being nimble and responsive is going to be huge for us moving forward.
Thank you, Mike. So with that, are there any additional questions? Hearing none, all in favor? None opposed. Motion carries. The next position to be considered, I'm sorry.
I'm opposed.
Okay.
Sorry.
Oh, you're not, okay. One not, okay, one not in favor. I'm so sorry I missed
It's
that.
okay.
Thank you.
More about that?
So I'm just big picture about there are other, I feel like a position that doesn't interact directly with kids at this point, I am really hesitant to add. When I know that we are not replacing we asked for early retirements, we're looking to not replace certain positions. I just feel like there needs to be, everyone's being asked to do more with less. We have teachers using their own money to buy, supplies for classrooms and things like that. So just fiscal responsibility, I just feel like fewer of our kids are using buses right now because we've asked parents to fill out surveys and asked them to opt out of busing. We're enforcing the distance minimum so that fewer families are eligible to utilize the buses. We have the app so that communication can go directly through the app to parents. So I'm just struggling with this position. I'm sorry.
No apologies necessary. Kim?
So just to be clear, we could not do anything. And if we did nothing, the situation would be worse. So if we just kept status quo and didn't bring anything to the board, the budget would stay neutral and everything would be not as well equipped to handle emergencies next year. If we did this, we're better equipped to handle emergencies and we're still budget neutral. So I just want to make that clear that we're not increasing the budget in any way, shape, or form. What we're trying to do is to be sensitive to emergencies and to be responsive without increasing the budget. So what this is doing is taking our current staff and either reducing or retitling so that people can have the responsibilities to be a backup for a person when they're out. And so I just want to make that clear that when we ask for approval or not, we're doing that with in the name of budget efficiency and safety for our system. So maybe that wasn't clear. Maybe we need to bring this back up. But this is not a budget decision. It's a budget neutral decision. It's a restructuring that's going to help our students, staff, and families.
Thank you. So that motion carries, and the next position to be considered is for Assistant Director of School Food Services. We have a motion to entertain that position. Would be Dave and Sarah. Are there questions? Hearing none, all in favor? Okay. Thank you. So that motion carries. Thank you. The final position to be considered this evening is Benefits Specialist. And may I have a motion to accept that position? That would be Kim and Emily. Okay, any questions? Hearing none. All in favor? Okay, that motion carries. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Next, we will hear from Ms. Woods with Special Education Report.
Good evening. The Committee on Special Education and Preschool Special Education recommendations are on the consent agenda.
Thank you, Ms. Woods. And from there, we will have our superintendent's report, Mr. Pero.
Thank you. There is not a need for an executive session this evening. I will share that I really appreciate Kim's comments and questioning, and I think everything that we do should be questioned and be under scrutiny to a large extent when it deals with budgetary matters, as we are looking at a $1.5 million deficit that we have to close. That was an example of how to restructure without adding costs to the budget, but there are going to be requests to add things to the budget, and we're saying no. So I appreciate the questioning there. We're not adding areas within our budget this year. We are looking at ways to be more efficient. So we have started with a $1.5 million budget deficit. That's after adding a significant amount of reserve funds that we, in addition to what we normally add. So we have been successful in looking at attrition and trying to keep budget reductions away from students, away from job loss. So through attrition alone, we're looking at reducing that from 1.5 now to about $700,000. We have about $800,000 in savings from those that are retiring, from hiring new staff. And we have a lot of other things that we're working on as far as efficiencies to bring that back down to zero, which will help us in the future years. So we are also working hard, and I need to thank our advocacy team for all of their work relative to communication to staff, families, community, newsletters, emails, hard copy letters being mailed home, videos, etc., sharing that we deserve more than we're getting. Pittsford rarely will ever try to advocate for things if we don't feel that it's well deserved. So it's been a long time since we've truly advocated for something, and I think the last time was for full-day kindergarten, and that was because we weren't getting funding, period, for something we are guaranteed to get, and we just weren't getting it. So we advocated for that. With foundation aid, we just have not been getting it, period. We're not getting it close to our next door neighbors. We are overlooked. We're in a category that we need to get out of as far as an old wealth index formula. If we were to calculate since 2012 what we've been promised and underpaid, it's about $100 million. And we're underpaid $100 million while at the same time there's districts that have been overpaid. And we don't want to make this an us against them concept, but we have been underpaid $100 million when other districts have been overpaid, and that's just a fact. When I think about what our community has endured the last 2 years, with inflation rates being between 8 and 10%, and the cost of everything going up, and what we received per student last year was, I don't want to say laughable because that might be disrespectful, but I think that the amount of money that we received was disrespectful, to be quite honest. We received approximately $1.75 per student increase last year. So we had an increase of $10,000 per student, or $10,000 for our district for foundation aid, while we watched others proportionately get a lot more. We receive approximately 34% less than our neighbors, and I feel like we produce a high quality, the highest of quality of education for our students, and we're vastly overlooked by the state as it relates to aid. So I'm asking everyone to contact our legislators, our local legislators, especially Senator Brauch and Assemblywoman Jen Lunsford, to champion this with us. We are doing our own work with responses to calls from Albany and meetings with the education budget chairs on both the Senate and the Assembly level. But what we really need are eyes on this, because if there's eyes, if people really just looked at what we've been receiving, they would hopefully understand the problem. Everyone has a tax cap to contend with. We have a tax cap to contend with, and everyone has their foundation aid to contend with. I would share that our tax cap the last several years has averaged out to be about under 2%, and at the same time, our foundation aid has been significantly lower than our counterparts. So I'm asking for our communities to just join us in a campaign to check our website under advocacy, to look out for more information from our newsletters and emails, and work with us to help advocate with our legislators so that we get our fair funding. In the event that we do not receive a significant increase in foundation aid, we do have a Plan B and a Plan C. which are significant reductions to program and personnel, which we're hoping we're not going to have to get to. So I'm asking everyone to please write to our legislators, ask them to champion public education in Pittsford, and work with us to resolve a problem that I feel that is compelling enough where our legislators should want to help us. And with that, I would wish everyone a happy holiday, and just share a bit of positive news that I've talked about before. Our students are doing amazing. I feel our students are back to where we were pre-COVID. You walk down all of our 9 buildings. Students are doing amazing work, both academically and relative to their behavior. We had we've had several substitute administrators in our district the last couple of weeks. And they've obviously been retired for a little bit and have worked in other districts. And the constant comment I receive is that they've never seen students so well-behaved and well-mannered and well-adjusted compared to where they were working in Pittsford. So love to hear that, love to see it. I want to thank our staff for doing an amazing job. Thank you to our community for hanging in there, and wishing everyone a happy holiday. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pirro. Next, we will entertain a motion for the consent agenda from Renee and Kim. Thank you. All in favor? None opposed. That motion carries. So next, is there any old business? Yes. Renee.
I don't know if this really falls under old or new business, but I just kind of want to swing back to Kim's question. And I just want to thank the both of you, Mike and Sean, for explaining that in greater detail, because even when I read through that, that was one of my concerns was, what is this going to look like? And Mike, thank you for your report, because you get into even more detail about, we do have plans A, B, and C. I think this is stressful for all of us who are making these bigger decisions. We definitely want to make sure that we're all doing the right things for our kids. But it really, reading that report led me to have a few questions as well. So I just wanted to say thank you for asking the questions, and for the three of you giving us such a detailed description and answer as to what we can look forward to. So thank you.
Thank you. So is there any new business? Okay, hearing none. We have a public comment this evening, and I'd like to ask Timothy Villa to please come forward. Thank you.
Hi there, everybody. Last name's actually pronounced Vi. I don't know why my parents did that to me. But,
I'm sorry.
So I have 3 kids at Park Road, and I did recently receive that letter that you were all talking about, the advocacy letter, which highlights important funding challenges. And I do believe that the increased funding is necessary. I also believe it's vitally important to examine our district's current funding priorities. The district chose to rely on BOCES for some legally mandated services. Those positions compensate significantly less than comparable positions with other employers, and those services experienced extended interruptions. Substitute coverage was not provided. These decisions were clearly financially motivated, and they create a clear record of impact on our most vulnerable students. So one of the district's core values is a supportive environment for all. For some students, that supportive environment requires specific services mandated by law, which may cost more and require you to make necessary but potentially unpopular budgeting decisions. Resource allocation choices have long-term implications beyond immediate budgets and political expediency. Districts that show a documented pattern of prioritizing cost savings over legal obligations eventually face extensive attorney fees and costly external review processes that redirect the limited resources away from the students. I am actually meeting with Jen Lunsford. I will be advocating for increased funding, but this advocacy comes with an expectation that it aligns with clear priorities. You got to meet the legal obligations, make student-centered staffing decisions that prioritize protecting the most vulnerable students first, and maintain transparent communication. So the path forward requires balancing fiscal responsibility with educational equity and legal compliance. And if you wish, I do welcome any direct dialogue with any of you at some point.
Mr. Vai, I would love that right now.
Okay.
So the first thing I would share is a huge thank you. Again, this is your second time here in public comment. And what I really appreciate more than anything else is you coming here directly and speaking with the Board of Education and us versus going to other sources, right? So that shows me that you genuinely have a concern about this. When you came last time, I'm hoping you feel that I was genuine in my response with regards to getting support for PT. The area that I would disagree with you on respectfully is that this has been a fiscal decision for us. That's 100%. It's actually the opposite of that. The reason that we've worked through BOCES for PT and OT is because of the consistency that we've had in the past relative to having people come in and service our kids. Having gone through what we've gone through this past year, like everyone is with staffing issues, we are revisiting what we are doing relative to BOCES' role in our school districts as it pertains to PT and OT, and so in other areas. So we have purchased back all of speech language, for example. So all of our speech teachers are pretty much, I think, Elizabeth, right, are all Pittsford, are now in district. Our OT and PT are very challenging positions. Our goal is and I agree with you, this is not an area where if we're going to save several $1,000s by going with BOCES versus hiring ourselves, that's not in our discussion. Our discussion has been, how do we provide consistent support for our kids? You don't see those things, and I don't expect you to see them because they're happening in my office, and they're happening with all the people around the board right now. So our goal is, at minimum, to increment over the next couple of years a hiring of our own PT, OT, for example. And to the point where we've already started working with our different bargaining units around where would they fall and where would their pay scale be and the complexity with all of that. So those conversations are happening right now. And our goal is the same as yours. The only misnomer I do want you to do what you want with it is to understand that we've never put a cost on PT/OT. We've instead looked at where can we get consistent support in PT/OT. Okay. So thank you. I don't know if you have any questions, anything else you want to ask.
Okay, since you're inviting the dialogue,
Yeah.
So why was there not already like a robust system in place for backup services through private contractors in the event that BOCES was unable to provide?
Yeah, good question. So what we have found is everything that before there's been, so for example, when we talked about redundancy and what we were hoping for, there was always redundancy in either subs or contracts, outside contracts that BOCES can help us with, because BOCES has access to contracts that we don't have. So we've never had an issue with it before. What's happening now is that physical therapists, occupational therapists have so many other areas that they can go to and get paid a lot more money.
Right. That's
right?
the issue, right?
Right. That's one of the issues.
Yeah.
And unless your focus is on students in schools, right? So we've never run into the problem before until I would say this past year. But that's not. It's not limited to PT and OT. It's limited to all of our services. So when we have a bus driver, if we were to contract with Student First, and someone would say, why don't you hire a bus driver? Well, we can't find one. So we haven't felt this with PT and OT as we have this year. But we're finding that we're having this problem in almost every area, where if someone is out, how do we replace? We know it's our responsibility to do it, which is why we are pursuing trying to bring back our own, which would be aligned to your public comment. But not aligned to your notion that we're not doing this because we want to save money.
It's not that I think you're trying to be responsible with taxpayer money. And of course, BOCES has a state aid ratio, so all of that factors into it. But when you look at the postings on Indeed and, BOCES is advertising a position 45,000 to 75,000, and the U of R is starting at 75,000 to like 125,000. If I was graduating as a PT, I know what job I would apply for. And so it's going to be difficult. As you mentioned, the inflation has increased the cost of everything. People are seeking higher wages, right? At the same time, you're trying to suppress how much the district is paying because you're accessing less funds from the state. And so you're going to have to make decisions. And so my point is that they have to be aligned, first of all, to what's legal and obligatory and what will support the most vulnerable students.
Agree. I would love to keep going, but I agree. I do not disagree with anything you just shared.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Vai. And now we will have a motion for adjournment. That would be from Sarah and Renee. All in favor? None opposed. That motion carries. Thank you.
Happy holidays, everyone.